This happened a few years ago. I was 32 and proud to serve on the USS Blackhawk. We were off the coast of Hawaii, just doing a routine training exercise. I thought it would be smooth sailing. The sunsets were beautiful, but I had no idea how quickly everything would change. Our drills were standard at first. Everything felt fine. But on the second night, I noticed something odd on the sonar. It was glitching. I told myself it was a technical issue. The crew shrugged it off too. But I knew something wasn't right. Days passed, and the unease grew. Those sonar anomalies got worse. I started seeing shadows on the display. Someone mentioned vibrations in the hull. I thought it was just the ocean swells. But then one night, things took a turn. A massive crash shook the ship. My heart raced. The lights flickered. Crew members shouted. I felt cold fear creep over me that I rushed to the deck. The crew was panicking. No one knew what had hit us. Tension hung in the air. I leaned over the edge, peering into the dark water. The ocean looked vast and deep. I thought I saw a shape moving below. But maybe it was just my imagination. Someone suggested a head count. We all stood there, adrenaline pumping. I scanned the faces around me. Would we get out of this? I wasn't sure. My hands shook. I heard whispers among the crew, huddled together talking about what had crashed into us. After that night, the exercises were called off. But those thoughts haunted me. Was it all just a glitch? Or was something down there with us? I replayed the crash in my mind. I was more scared of the questions. What could cause that force? What lurks beneath those dark waves? Deep down, I sensed the ocean hid secrets, something monstrous. Then came the final night. I couldn't sleep. I stood at the edge of the deck, staring into the water. Suddenly, I heard a low growl, deep and rumbling. It made my skin crawl. I looked around. The crew was long gone, leaving me alone in the night. The sound grew louder. I felt my heart pounding in my chest. My breath quickened. I was filled with fear and dread. I leaned over the edge again. That's when I saw it. A massive dark shape glided below the surface. It was too big to be a whale, too ancient. It was a meg of monster proportions. My blood turned cold as I stared. I backed away, nearly stumbling. Just then, it surfaced with a massive splash. The water erupted, and I caught a glimpse of razor-sharp teeth. I froze in place, paralyzed by terror. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished back into the deep. I stood there, heart racing, wondering if it was still down there. I never spoke about it. Some things are better left unsaid. But I still think about that night. I can't shake the feeling. What if it's still lurking down there, waiting? I often wonder what other secrets the ocean holds. I couldn't shake the sight of that creature from my mind. The image replayed in my thoughts like a broken record. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw those teeth, sharp and menacing. I remained awake that night, every creak of the ship amplifying my fear. What was out there? The next day, the drills resumed, but they felt different. Tension buzzed in the air like static electricity. Crew members exchanged glances, their chatter hushed. I figured they felt it too, a collective fear we all tried to shove down. During lunch, I overheard two sailors discussing the sonar reports. You think it's still down there? One asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The other shrugged, but I caught the way his hands trembled around his tray. I knew then I wasn't the only one haunted by what lay below. When my shift started, I took my place at the sonar station. I stared at the screen, searching. My heart sank. The usual rhythmic pings were replaced by static and distortions. Just like before. I held my breath, hoping it was merely a malfunction, but deep down, I could feel panic rising. Midway through my watch, the sonar began to glitch again. It was the same pattern, a pulsing shadow flickering in and out. I called over my supervisor. "You need to see this," I said, my voice tense. He joined me at the console, brow furrowed as he studied the readings. Confusion creased his forehead. "Could be interference," he suggested, though I could tell he was trying to convince himself as much as me. I shook my head. "No, it's more than that. There was something out there last night, something big." Before he could respond, the ship lurched. We grabbed onto the consoles to steady ourselves as another violent tremor shook the hull. The lights flickered again, sending a cascade of shadows down the walls. The crew erupted into chaos, and my heart raced. "Everyone to your stations." My supervisor barked, trying to regain control. But it felt like we were on the brink of something terrible. Each voice added to the clamor, rising like a warning bell. I darted outside into the fresh air. The ocean looked indifferent, waves rolled as if they had no idea what was brewing beneath. Suddenly, a scream split the air. I turned, my blood turning to ice. A crew member fell backward, pointing into the water. My stomach dropped as I saw it, a massive fin slicing through the surface like a knife. My breath caught in my throat. I saw it again. The sailor yelled, eyes wide. My heart lurched as the realization hit me. The Meg wasn't just a one-time sighting. It was still here. Then, as if hearing our fear, the creature surged. Water exploded upwards, crashing against the ship. I stumbled back, falling against the railing. I felt that familiar dread, a cold grip that squeezed my chest as I searched for a place to hide. But there was no hiding from the monster lurking below. With every ounce of courage, I shouted, "We need to get out of here." The scene before me was a frenzy of movement. Panic gripped the crew, but I hardly felt a part of it. I knew it was watching us, just below the surface, biding its time. As I stood there, frozen, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd awakened something ancient and powerful. Then, without warning, the screen at the sonar station lit up again. I glanced back, heart pounding. That's when I saw it, a shape moving closer, and this time, I wasn't imagining it. The sonar blared, its beep now frantic as the shape drew nearer. My heart raced. I stumbled back inside, reeling from the chaos outside. The grip of fear anchored my feet to the floor. I kept my eyes glued to the screen, desperate for clarity. "Is it there? Can you see it?" My supervisor's voice cut through the noise, sharp yet tinged with anxiety. I didn't answer. All I could think about was the darkness lurking just beneath the waves. The display flickered again, and I adjusted the settings, hoping to get a better reading. My hands shook as I typed commands, the tension in the air tightening around me. Finally, the shape became clearer, an immense figure, larger than anything I'd ever seen, moved with purpose beneath the surface. "Get everyone back on deck," I yelled, panic spilling over. "Now." My supervisor hesitated, eyes darting between the screen and me. I could see he was trying to rationalize what we were witnessing. "It's probably just a pod of sharks," he suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Sharks don't measure 30 feet. I snapped, urgency drenching my words. I could see crew members scrambling up the steps to the deck, their faces pale and eyes wide, reflecting the confusion and fear that had gripped us all. "Everyone, listen up," I called out, my voice cracking slightly over the increasing din. "Whatever is out there is not friendly. We need to prepare for impact." The crew formed a huddle, faces strained and eyes searching for reassurance. But I had none to give. The ocean seemed to amplify my fear, each wave slapping against the hull reminding me of the creature lurking just below. That's when I heard the roar, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to vibrate through the ship, shaking my bones. It echoed like thunder. I looked over at the water, dread settling in like a weight. "Everyone stay calm," I shouted, though my own heart raced. The ship swayed uneasily. Crew members pointed into the water, gasping. I followed their gazes, and my stomach dropped. The water churned violently, and the great fin emerged again, slicing through the surface with terrifying ease. "Get below deck!" I yelled. My instincts screamed for preservation. We weren't equipped to handle whatever this was. But my legs, filled with adrenaline, moved me toward the railing. I peered down, gripping it tightly. I could feel the cold of the metal beneath my palms. The water shuddered, and for a moment, the monster's massive shadow darkened the depths, an ominous reminder of its power. Then, in an instant, it breached. The creature exploded from the water, sending a shower of spray into the air. My breath hitched as I froze in horror. It was monstrous, its teeth glinting in the sunlight, the massive body undulating, showcasing a power that made the ship feel like a toy. "Help me!" one of the crew shouted, wrestling against fear as he scrambled for safety. But all I could do was watch as the creature thrashed the water, sending the ship tumbling. That I felt the world slow. We were not in control. And even if we tried to get away, the Megalodon wasn't just a threat, it was a force of nature, one that we had disturbed. Then the screen blipped again, and a new piece of information caught my eye. Something else was moving, something smaller near the creature, hidden from our sight. My chest tightened. What else was down there? Suddenly, the deck reverberated with a deafening crash as the creature made its next move, and darkness enveloped everything. I woke to chaos. The ship tilted alarmingly, the sound of metal screeching against the waves pierced my ears. I struggled to sit up, disoriented. Water sprayed over the deck, soaking my uniform. Crew members shouted in sheer panic, their faces twisted with fear. "Get control of the situation." Someone yelled over the din, but I couldn't see who. My mind was a whirlpool of confusion. The Megalodon had surfaced, and I had no idea what had happened while I was unconscious. That I pushed myself up and staggered toward the bridge. The view was a nightmare. The large creature thrashed in the water, creating waves that crashed against our ship. I could feel the deck tremble beneath my feet, almost as if it were alive. "Report!" I shouted to no one in particular, looking for a familiar face, someone who could help. A crew member sprinted past, panicking, dripping water, and I grabbed his arm. "Where's everyone else?" Captain ordered everyone to the launch bay. "We're trying to get the lifeboats ready." He stammered, eyes wide with fear. "Lifeboats?" I said, suddenly realizing the gravity of our situation. "We can't leave the ship. We need to stabilize it." I broke free of him and rushed to the console, my heart racing. The screen flickered to life again, and I scrolled through the data. The sonar displayed both the Megalodon and that other shape I'd seen. It was still there, moving erratically, small enough to remain hidden but big enough to pose a threat. I dug deeper into the sonar reading. "What the hell are you?" I muttered, frustration rising. But it was the next wave that took my breath away. The water exploded toward the bow, and I braced against the console as another monstrous roar filled the air, louder this time, shaking our very foundations. The crew members were still scrambling, trying to grasp what we had unleashed. It wasn't just the Megalodon anymore, whatever that smaller shape was, it was circling and closing in. "We have to prepare for impact again," I shouted, desperately grabbing a nearby life vest and tossing it onto the floor where some crew stood frozen. Then, a sudden jolt slammed into the starboard side, sending several people sprawling. I grabbed hold of a railing as another monstrous crash came from below. The ship seemed to let out a groan. "Everyone! To the launch bay, now!" I barked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rising panic. My heart beat in my throat as I charged toward the exit, hoping to regroup with my team. As I made it out onto the deck, I spotted movement in the corner of my eye. The smaller creature breached, revealing itself to be a young Megalodon, almost the length of the ship but not nearly as large as its parent. I stumbled back, disbelief flooding through me. "Get away from the edge!" I shouted, but I felt something grab my ankle before I could move. I screamed as I was yanked toward the railing, the world blurring around me. And then everything went dark. I came to with a violent jolt, the pounding of adrenaline drowning out the chaos around me. The cold water lapped at my face as I struggled to sit up. I was still on the deck, but now I was drenched and surrounded by debris. It took me a moment to realize that I was in the water, the ocean swirling beneath me. That I scrambled to my feet, confusion still gripping my mind. The ship loomed above, precariously listing to one side. I blinked rapidly, trying to regain focus. My heart thundered as I scanned for crew members. The frantic shouts echoed distantly, but clarity nagged at me. Where was the young Megalodon? Then I saw it. A dark shadow moved just beneath the surface, circling near the ship. I couldn't tell if it was the young Megalodon or something else entirely. My instincts screamed for me to get back on the vessel. That I turned frantically, but the ship felt like a distant memory. I pulled myself along the slick side, inching my way closer to the gangway. That's when I spotted another crew member. "Help! We have to get back on!" I shouted, waving my arms. That he looked at me, panic etched on his face. "The captain, we have to wait for the captain." His voice trembled, and I could see he was almost as lost as I felt. "Forget the captain. We need to move," I hissed, desperation flooding me. I reached out a hand, and he grabbed it, both of us struggling against the rolling water. Suddenly, a loud crack split the air. Something from underneath slammed into the ship. The hull shuddered as I felt the water surge. The sound was unlike anything I'd heard, a warning and a promise of danger. I tugged him to me, and together we made a dash for the gangway. As we reached it, the young Megalodon breached again, its massive jaws agape. I barely had time to comprehend the sight before it dove back under. The water churned intensely. We both scrambled aboard, hearts racing. Just as I pulled myself over the railing, I turned to look back. That's when I saw it, the other shape from the sonar, now just beneath the surface, a gleaming eye staring right at me. "What was that?" my crewmate shouted, his voice shaking. "I don't know," I gasped, staring into the depths. Was it another Megalodon? Or something worse? A deafening roar echoed from below, vibrating through the ship. The older Megalodon was back, fury driving it to protect its young. It thrashed violently, sending waves crashing over the deck, and I knew in that moment we were in deeper trouble than before. "We have to keep inside," I yelled, urgency coursing through my veins. But my words fell flat as I turned to see more chaos unfolding around us. Crew members were scrambling, eyes wide with terror, and then, as if it couldn't get any worse, a shadow emerged from the depths, something enormous, powerful, and utterly unfamiliar. I had to fight against the urge to scream. The ship was teetering, and the waters roared around us. My heart raced as I realized this was only the beginning. We were no longer just fighting off one Megalodon, we were in the middle of a nightmare. "What is happening?" my crewmate asked, disbelief etched on his face. "Get to the bridge," I yelled, turning back, my mind racing. "We need answers now." But the moment I glanced back into the water, everything went black once more. I opened my eyes to chaos. Water splashed around me as I lay flat on the deck. Alarms blared. I could feel the ship shaking beneath my body, as the vibrations pulsed through the metal like a heartbeat. I staggered to my feet, the salty air burning my lungs. "Get to the bridge," I yelled over the din. But as I looked around, crew members were huddled together, their faces painted with fear. I spotted the crewmate I had pulled from the water. He was still alive, but his eyes were filled with a mixture of confusion and terror. "What happened out there?" he shouted, barely able to be heard over the cacophony. "I don't know," I replied, scanning the horizon. The sea churned ominously. "We have to get back to the controls." As adrenaline surged through me, I pushed past the stunned crew, racing toward the bridge. I could feel the waves battering against the hull, each hit causing the ship to tremble. I prayed we wouldn't capsize. When I reached the bridge, my heart sank. The captain was there, but he looked just as lost as the rest of us. What is going on? Where did that thing come from? He barked, his hands gripping the console like a lifeline. Sir, the younger Megalodon was right beneath us, but something much bigger showed up. I managed to say as I caught my breath. I felt the urgency in my words. He is not joking, my crewmate added, his face pale. It was massive, bigger than anything we've seen before. The captain's brow furrowed. Show me. Bring up the sonar. I clicked the controls, and the screen flickered with images of the ocean floor. The outlines were jagged, pulses indicating movement. My stomach dropped when I saw it, two enormous shadows moving together beneath our vessel. Those aren't just megalodons. This is something else. We need to get out of here. I said, panic creeping into my voice. The shadows shifted quickly, a dangerous choreography that hinted at the predator lurking below. A void is opening beneath us. The helmsman shouted. There's too much turbulence. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, tossing us all against the control panel. A thunderous roar erupted from the depths below, drowning out the sound of alarms. I gripped the railing for dear life, eyes wide. We're being dragged. The captain yelled. Reverse engines. Now. But before we could react, the ship was lifted. In the chaos, I heard a familiar splashing. My heart hammered as I turned. The young Megalodon broke the surface, thrashing, but it was the bigger shadow that took my breath away. It breached alongside its smaller counterpart, revealing rows of jagged teeth and glowing eyes fixed on us. Time seemed to freeze. I felt sick as the realization hit me. We were caught between predators. Then, in a flash, the larger Megalodon lunged. I barely had time to react before a wall of water crashed onto the bridge. Everything went dark, and I felt myself being swept away. The last thing I heard was the captain's shout, "Hold on." But there was no holding on when the world fell silent around me. I gasped as I broke through the surface, the cold water wrapping around me like a shroud. Panic surged, I instinctively kicked, propelling myself upwards. The sound of chaos was muted below me, but I could still feel the vibrations of the ship's engine sputtering in distress. As I surfaced, I turned around, eyes searching frantically for anything familiar. My heart sank when I realized the bridge was gone, just a heap of wreckage and debris bobbing on the waves. All around me, the ocean roared, a wild and unforgiving beast. Where is everyone? I shouted, my voice swallowed by the fury of the sea. I scanned the horizon, the dread settling in the pit of my stomach. I thought of the crew, my crew. Had they made it out? Then I saw him, my crewmate, flailing several yards away. I swam towards him, desperation fueling my strokes. Over here. I shouted, relieved when he spotted me. We clung to each other in the water, the waves crashing around us. What the hell just happened? He gasped, spitting water. I don't know. I yelled back. But we can't stay here. We have to find the lifeboats. Nodding, we struck out towards the last place we'd seen them. The sea continued to churn, and each wave felt like it was trying to drag me under. I focused on my breathing, trying to suppress the rising fear. Suddenly, a shadow passed beneath us, swift and massive. I froze, my heart racing. Did you see that? I asked, my voice trembling. My crewmate nodded, wide-eyed, and we exchanged a look of mutual dread. The water around us erupted, and the young Megalodon lunged from the depths, splashing violently as it breached above us. It landed mere feet away, its mouth gaping, teeth menacing. Get back! I shouted, instinctively pulling my crewmate away just as it snapped its jaws in our direction. The adrenaline coursing through me was electric. I spun, trying to spot the larger shadow that had been beneath us earlier. Then I saw it, a shape darker than night, rising ominously from the depths. Panic broke through my composure, and I tried to swim away, but the water roiled around us like a cyclone. Swim! Swim. I urged, but the waves were relentless. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the lifeboat, crushed and floating nearby. There. I pointed. We pushed through the icy waves, our bodies straining against the pull of the ocean. Just as I reached out for the lifesaver, the larger Megalodon burst through the surface, the sound like thunder. My throat went dry as its eyes locked onto me, icy and predatory. Everything around me fell silent. Time slowed as I realized we were still in its territory. The young Megalodon thrashed nearby, but it was the giant that sent shivers down my spine. I had never felt such unadulterated terror before. Go! I screamed, pushing my crewmate towards the lifeboat. But as I turned back, a flash of movement caught my attention. In an unexpected turn, the larger Megalodon dove, its massive tail whipping through the water and creating a wave that crashed over us. I felt myself being pulled under again, darkness closing in, but as panic took over, I made one desperate decision. Then everything went black. I was weightless in that darkness, and for a moment, I forgot the chaos around me. But the icy grip of the ocean jolted me back. I fought against the water, clawing my way upward, heart pounding in my chest like a drum. As I broke the surface, panicked breaths filled my lungs, but the salty taste made me gag that I was alone. The ocean sprawled around me, vast and indifferent. Where is he? I whispered, scanning the water for any sign of my crewmate. The low roar of the waves muffled my cries. Stay calm, I muttered to myself. Over there the tipping wreckage of the lifeboat still floated. My heart surged with hope. I kicked toward it, muscles screaming in protest. I could not afford to think of how close the Megalodons were. As I reached the lifeboat, I hoisted myself onto its side. It creaked under my weight, and I glanced below. Bubbles danced at the surface, and I swore I saw a fin slice through the water, sharp and menacing. Not again. Just then, I heard a weak splashing. I turned my head, and there was my crewmate clinging desperately to a piece of driftwood. Relief washed over me. Hold on. I'm coming. I called, but doubt clouded my thoughts. What if the Megalodons were still lurking? Without hesitating, I dove back into the frigid water. I pushed through with shaky strokes, every inch feeling like a mile. I reached him, grasping his arm with fierce determination. Grab on! I shouted, pulling him toward the lifeboat. He managed to loop his arm around the edge, and together we clambered onto its battered frame. We were panting, hearts racing, but at least we were together. Did you see that thing? He gasped, a wild look in his eyes. It's massive. Yeah, I saw, I replied, trying to catch my breath. There must be more of them. As we steadied ourselves, I noticed the lifeboat was partially submerged, the water lapping at its edges. We needed to find a way to signal for help. I scanned the wreckage around us for anything that might work. Moments later, I spotted a flare gun, buried beneath some debris. Look! I pointed, my hands shaking as I pulled it free. This could be our only shot. He looked at me, worry etched on his face. Do you think it'll even work? What if they come back? Right now, it's our best chance, I said, gripping the flare gun tightly. I glanced at the horizon, hoping for a distant sight of a rescue ship. Time was slipping away, and the unease in the water told me our window was closing fast. That I loaded the flare, adrenaline surging. But just as I was about to pull the trigger, a roar erupted beneath us. The water churned violently, tossing the lifeboat like a toy. Get ready! I shouted. The younger Megalodon breached, and I felt the rush of water surge around us. And that's when I saw the massive shadow of the older Megalodon rising behind the young one. It was coming for us. My heart thundered. We have to go, now. Signal for help. I yelled, but my voice barely rose above the chaos. We were trapped, caught between the waves and a nightmare. The Megalodon's monstrous silhouette loomed closer. Then everything went dark. I came to with a jolt, gasping for air, but my lungs only filled with salt water. Panic surged, and I kicked upwards, my hands flailing against the ocean's grip. Breaking the surface, I wiped the sea from my face. My heart raced. Where was he? The lifeboat was still there, but my crewmate was gone. No. I yelled, scanning the chaotic waters. You have to be here. But deep down, I feared the worst. The crash of water around me grew louder as I felt the thrum of something big moving underneath. Instinct kicked in. I needed to grab that flare gun and signal for help. I had to be brave. With shaky breaths, I reached for the lifeboat, pulling myself up onto it. I felt the waves push and pull, as if they wanted me back down. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let fear rule me now that as I steadied my footing, I looked at the flare gun clutched in my trembling hands. The tension in the water was palpable, something was lurking just beneath the surface. I quickly loaded another flare, feeling the weight of time bearing down on me. Just then, a dark shadow flickered across the water, a fin cutting through the waves, then sinking again. My insides twisted with dread. We need to go now. I yelled, but I had no plan. I scanned the horizon. Our best hope was a passing ship. There had to be someone out there. The flare gun felt like a lifeline. We'll wait for the right moment, I whispered to myself, even though I was alone. Before I could think more, the ocean erupted. The younger Megalodon breached again, mouth agape, showing rows of teeth that could easily snap a man in half. I whipped around, eyes wide, and saw it again, the larger Megalodon circling beneath. They were no longer just shadows, they were a reality closing in on us. I raised the flare gun, but doubt crept in. Was it even loaded? Did I have the strength to press the trigger as my whole body trembled? The waves grew rougher, tossing the lifeboat. This was it. I had to act. Just as I steadied my aim, the water erupted again, in a glorious, terrifying display of strength. The larger Megalodon broke the surface fully. Its size was unfathomable, dwarfing our lifeboat, fury and hunger radiating from its massive frame. In that moment, my instincts screamed at me to flee. But all I could do was stare. Its eyes locked onto mine, primal and ancient, and then the younger Megalodon lunged, splashing against the boat. As I pulled the trigger, the flares shot high into the sky, bursting into a shower of light. As the brilliant red flame illuminated the chaos around us, I caught a glimpse of something else in the water, a flicker, maybe a warning or a sign. My heart raced as the water surged again, dragging the lifeboat sideways, closer to the edge of the abyss. Then everything went black as the boat tipped violently, and I plunged into the depths once more. I resurfaced, gasping for air, the ocean around me a churning tempest of chaos and uncertainty. The flare light flickered in the distance, a small ember of hope in the engulfing darkness. I struggled to catch my breath, instinctively swimming towards the last faint glow. But as I pushed against the waves, dread settled in. Where was the Megalodon? The night had turned treacherous, the water pulsating with energy. I could feel a presence moving beneath me, lurking just out of sight. Panic surged as I realized the young Megalodon was swimming nearby, but it felt all too close. I stroked harder toward the flare's radiance, adrenaline thrumming through me. Suddenly, the water erupted again, waves crashing wildly as the larger Megalodon breached, its enormous body displaying power beyond comprehension. I fought to stay afloat, heart pounding as the creature's shadow glided ominously beneath me. I focused on the flare, narrowing my world down to that tiny beacon. If I could reach it, maybe there was still hope for rescue. With sharp strokes, I strained against the ocean's pull, aware of the monstrous eyes that were likely watching, calculating my every move. A blood-curdling roar pierced the air above me. Fear thrummed through me, and I quickly turned to see the younger Megalodon surface, thrashing violently. It was frantic, its hungry gaze locked onto me. I scrambled, fear clawing at my throat, memories of the ship flooding back, my crewmates, their terrified faces, the shouts, the impact. Was I truly the last one left? With all my might, I pushed myself towards the light of the flare, knowing it might be my sole chance. The waves swirled, threatening to inch me back down to the cold abyss. In my peripheral vision, I glimpsed a dark fin slice through the water, and instinct told me not to look back. I focused on the flare, its bright red hue urging me to fight harder. I strained every muscle, crawling a desperate swim toward survival. Almost there. Almost. The younger Megalodon surged again, surfacing right beside me, its gaping jaws edged with predatory hunger. The instinct to scream rose in my throat as I launched my body upwards, diving beyond its snapping teeth. As I broke the surface, the flare blazed against the dark sky, illuminating the space around me, reeking of desperation. In that moment, I heard a distant sound, the engine of a boat slicing through the waves. I turned, squinting into the horizon, hope igniting a flicker in my chest. But the excitement was quickly followed by terror as the chaos around me ramped up. The larger Megalodon wouldn't let me escape that easily. Its massive body churned the water, and time felt as if it were both racing and dragging. The roar thundered again, and everything went dark once more. I was submerged, the cold enveloping me, and for a moment, nothing existed but silence and the pressing weight of the ocean. I flailed against it, but every direction felt wrong. My lungs strained against the suffocating cold. The world around me faded, a swirling void, and then light. A sudden jolt of awareness surged, and arms wrapped around me, pulling me free from the depths. I gasped, air flooding my lungs as I was yanked upwards. "Hold tight!" a voice shouted through the chaos. I felt the pull of a lifebuoy cradle me, the weight of fear lifted for an instant. I realized it was a rescue crew, already surrounding me, pulling others aboard, desperately pulling me from the brink. As I clung to the side of the boat, trembling, I looked back one last time. Far beneath, shadows danced in the water's depths. The faint outline of the Megalodons faded into the dark, leaving the questions lingering like ghosts. Was it truly done? Would they return? I never spoke of that night or the dread I had felt. The crew moved on, but in the quiet moments, memories would surface, and the secrets of the ocean would haunt me. I often wonder what lies beneath, still lurking, waiting to awaken. I survived, yes, but the darkness of that moment would always linger, a somber reminder of what the ocean kept hidden.